So thanks, David, for the introduction. For the start, I just want to say a bit about today's format. We are going to have a sort of an informal panel that will focus on the broad topic of film sound and film music, especially in context of silent films, but also in other contexts as well. And I would really like to encourage all of you, if you have any questions, of course, we are going to have a Q&A at the end, but if you feel like you have something to say or to ask during our panel or during the discussion, please don't hesitate and write it down in chat, and we can address the question or even unmute you if you want to ask the question yourself. So don't be shy, and if you feel like it, talk to us. So I would like to welcome our guests as well. As David said, there's a link to the Facebook event, which has all the bios of our guests. But I would like to introduce Sara Pinheiro, Jan Burian, Tomáš Vtípil, and Martin Ožvold, who are our fabulous guests tonight. And I would like to start off our debate with a broad question directed to the main topic of our season of classic films, which is silent films. And I would like to ask, preferably every one of you, what does a sound of silent film mean to you personally? So maybe Sara, if you feel like starting.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I don't know who I'm talking to, so it's a bit weird, but at least hi, the other guests. And thanks for inviting me. What was the question? What the sound of silent film mean to me? Oh my God. If you talk about, well, you know, without wanting to go for a very obvious path, I immediately think about the fact that there's no such a thing as silent film, both in the sense, you know, of the fact that most silent films had music accompaniment, but also if you think of the optical noise, right, of the material, of the support noise. So in that sense, if we talk about films without sound, then I think maybe also because you're sitting in Pandrepo and I can hear a projector behind you playing, you know. So I think about these. I think about the apparatus that plays the movie back, I think.
Sorry, I forgot how to unmute myself. So I think I'll go in the order in which I see you on the screen. So I'll continue with Yannick if you want to follow up on Sara's answer.
I don't know the answer because I cannot speak about anything like in general. If you ask me like a specific film, then I can answer you, because it's a little bit hard for me, because I perceive everything as a music. So I must have some experience with a specific movie, then I can speak about it.
Yeah, I think we are going to get to the specifics or specific films or specific topics connected to our main topic a bit later. But I think that's a good answer for our start. And I will continue with Tomáš if he has anything to add.
Well, I would definitely go with Sara in this point. There's no such thing as silent film. There is no such thing as silence, by the way. It doesn't exist, so it cannot exist in film. Of course, there are films that don't contain any sound recordings, but it doesn't mean that they are really silent. They're just not.
I think that really connects well to our like main topic, which or one of our main topics, which is like what is the sound of silent films, which kind of connects to what is the sound of silence. So I think that's really a good point. And if Martin has anything to add for our opening.
Hi everyone, and yeah, I think lots of things were said, and I think that I would agree with all of my previous colleagues in the sense, and of course we can stream it up down to the era and to discuss something about the era of when the film was accompanied by, or actually was not accompanied by the soundtrack, right? And there's other topic. So when I conclude that there is, I don't think there is such a thing as a silence. I think that everything is music, or everything is sound, and we experience lots of things in the kind of media world. We discuss the world through the media somehow. So I think we will continue.
So if I just stick with you for a moment, Martin. From your experience, both as a sound designer or composer, and both as a listener and a viewer, do you think that there are any specifics for silent film composition or silent film accompaniment, as opposed to not like classical films or like sound films or even other like sound performances?
I think for me, talking about experience with the film we were working on, I think that's very, very important thing to know. There is not a spoken word, so it's not logocentric, or it's not logocentric based storytelling. So for me, this is always like big. It was a lovely experience. So I think that's something what I would frame by the talkies or the talking film movie or the role of the spoken word as dialogues, or in this sense. And we approached it as a not synchronized words and not really comprehensive words. So I think it was a very important thing about including the language in the sense of the dialogues in the film. And then for me there is the other point that for me it's something what is my ideology, is that the sound design is a new score. So I'm composing with all elements of the soundtrack. And so what's different from the usual thing is that there was no dialogues, right? Or there is no voiceover, or there is not such an element. So I feel more free in a narrative. That was very, very fascinating thing to realize. And I spoke, because I was working on other film, and I spoke to director I'm working now with. Let's make a silent film. It's no dialogues. So.
Yeah, and I think this topic is, or I wanted to ask Jeník specifically about both like the same question, like what are the specifics of working for a silent film or as a composer for a silent film, but your experience with silent films is somewhat interesting for our topic, because you, as opposed to others, you have decided not to perform the piece live, or it was done more as a recording, whereas the other accompaniments were originally conceived as live performances. And also there is like you have worked at the film for the film Takový je život, and then you did the soundtrack for the Kříženecký film, the earliest Czech films, which we digitized. And so if you could compare like those two experiences, what is it like to work for, let's say, a feature film and then for Kříženecký film, and how does it connect to the specific language you have decided to use?
Well, it's always it's for me it's like no. It's actually not a big difference of working for movie silent movie and movie with the sound. Each movie is a specific being. And if some silent movie, for example, Takový je život, the first movie I composed music, it was actually very busy and noisy and intensive movie filled with music already, yeah. Even it was silent, yeah. So, and in both cases, Křižanecký and Takový je život, I had a little bit feeling I failed in a different, let's say, fields. In Takový je život, I did the music for the film. More it came to me that it's not totally necessary, that it's really beautiful how it is, yeah, and because it's very expressive and it's a social drama, let's say, film, and it's editing of the film is very, very let's say experimental or advanced for the era. So I had a feeling like music is only adding something which is not really necessary. But I enjoyed it a lot because I decided to work with the oldest Czech recordings of our traditional music and to work with those recordings and to decompose them and so on and so on. So for me it was beautiful work. Just now I see it that it's a little bit failure. Křižanecký is very different because it's not a movie actually. It's just let's say it's just a lot of pieces of documentary because some of them are not documentary material, which is not edited like the movie. So there is no, let's say, rhythm in you know, because editing is of course very important. So for me it was working with a totally different perspective, how to connect, because some pieces are very short, some pieces are, I don't know, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, some pieces are few seconds. So for me, it was the task how to connect it all, and I try to focus more on, let's say, material itself. It means how the film was damaged, for certain atmosphere and so on. And of course, there was, for me, there was a let's say, educational part for me, because I also start to searching for the music of that era. And I found Josef Suk starší and his composition for the piano, O Matince. And it's actually a very beautiful composition. And so I started to work with this piano composition. And then I really slow it down, like it's like, I don't remember the time, but it was like if something like 5 minutes, I slowed it down for 1 hour, you know. So, but the essence was there. So for me, it was, again, just, it's not totally necessary to, like, if you watch the film, to have to know this, but it's just for me how I am having fun while working on something. Yeah, just do also, of course, a lot of research. So, and I failed, I think, in the different field, and it was that the final music was composed to be played really, really low in the cinema, yeah, just to connect with the noise of the, let's say, building, with the noise of the with the projectors or something, to connect with the noise on the screens. And it actually showed that it's kind of difficult with today. If you come to the cinema and say, yeah, you must play it low, the music, yeah, it's not normal. So this is like, I think maybe next time I will think about it differently.
Yeah, thanks. So I also wanted to ask this, or like continue with this with Tomáš as well, because your accompaniment or the film you have done, Bílý ráj, has like started our festival, and you have, I don't remember how many times you have performed this film, but I think it's one of the films that we tend to program more than the others for several reasons. I think luck is one of them. And I just wanted to ask, how do you feel that your work on the film, from the beginning, how did you feel that working for a silent film that was perceived to be played or performed live, how did it compare to your previous compositional work for film? And how do you, like, if your approach towards the film or your performance has changed during the, like, is it 3 years already since its premiere? I'm not sure. I think it's almost already 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so I hope I remember all of your questions. Well, for Bílý ráj, I decided to consider the film itself finished in the state it was made by its authors. This means without recordings, without any intentional sound. And this brings me some kind of freedom that I can actually make music or sound that is active somehow. It doesn't really follow just the film, but more like coexists with it. Sometimes goes along, sometimes goes against. And yeah, I think in this way, which is very different from the methods I would use for normal film score. I think this is really possible to get some new experience, and from those, I don't know, 10 performances or how many was so then I really have this experience that people tend to react on it, sometimes even very angrily, which is interesting, really. It's a good thing, actually, because this means that it does something. Nowadays, you can do whatever you want. You can strip on a stage or cut yourself and everything. I've done all of this, and there is barely any reaction because everybody considers this normal, but sometimes you play, I don't know, some chord which somebody feels like inappropriate to the movie, and there is happening something. Somebody even feels offended and stuff like this. So this was interesting. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I think you did. You have. Or I just wanted to add or like re-ask the question: how do you feel that the accompaniment or your approach towards the film or your feelings towards the film have changed during the 3 years you've been playing Bílý ráj?
Yes. Well, it was like a part of the conception that the music will evolve somehow. So this means that each performance was slightly different. We even made several versions. Once it was performed with more musicians. The last one was strictly solo. So yes, my connection with the film definitely went through some kind of process. And for example, in the last version, I didn't use picture analyzer, which I used quite heavily in the first versions. And so on. Well, there were instrumental changes, there were structural changes. So even if like the selection of motifs was more or less closed, the structure was a bit different each time.
Okay, thanks. So I wanted to ask Sara, or David actually pinged me that one of the viewers, Matěj, might have a question, and I don't see the raised hand. So if you have a question, Matěj, you can raise your hand again, and David will unmute you. And meanwhile, I'll just ask a question to Sara, and then we can sort this out. So Sara, I'm not really sure if you've ever, or to my knowledge, I've never seen you play for a silent film. Maybe you will surprise me and tell me that you have a like huge history with silent films and it's your passion as a performer. But we'll see. But even though you, to my knowledge, haven't really performed for silent films, you've done much of like live Foley and I wanted to talk a bit with you about like the dramaturgy of live performances and live film performances. And even though that you haven't performed for silent films, I would like to ask if you feel that there is any difference for your, like, compared to what you feel like should live cinema or live Foley be, and how do you view that the topics you're trying to raise or the methods you are using could be used in the realms of silent film, and if there is even, or how do you connect yourself to the whole diegesis of live performances and performer actually trying to sound like he's part of the film?
Well, I think it's a very counter nature thing to do, counter the nature of the work. In my case in particular, it also had to do with the respect that I had. I did live Foley for Chantal Ackermann's first short movie called Sotmavin. And I struggled a lot with the feeling that I was changing her work. And in the back of my head, I was always thinking, like, would she approve what I'm doing. In a sense, I think it's a little bit what Ian was saying, that if he felt that sometimes his music was not necessary. And that also has to do, I think, with the intensive understanding that we grow of the product, because we watch it so much. And you know, I think some of you are familiar with like a very extensive analysis that I did of a 10-minute long film. So I know that short movie intensively. So in general, with all due respect, I am not very fond of live music for cinema, because I also have probably, I'm too sensitive to it, so I pay too much attention to it, and it steals the attention from the film itself. And I also feel that most of the times it's conducting me too much. It's guiding my experience too much. It's telling me exactly what to feel, what to think, what to perceive of the story at too many times, in my opinion. So this one time that I did live fully for Chantal, it had more to do with the fact that I wanted to sample the sounds that I was doing. I wanted to sample them live to then continue performing with them after the movie was finished. And also the first time that I played with it, or that I played for it, I think it worked. I made sure that my sound was very lo-fi, so it blended in a way with the original movie that no one could really say which sounds I added and which sounds were there from the beginning. And that's also why I make a point, so to say, to sit behind the audience. I performed it a couple of times, and I prefer when I sit behind the audience, because I don't want it to be noticed. I don't want it to become a thing that I'm making the sounds. I want people to genuinely just experience the movie. Yeah, I think
it connects greatly to my next question, or like one of the talking points or topics, because before this debate, the film Hříchy lásky was screened, and Martin, our panelist, is one of the artists or musicians or composers that did the soundtrack for the film. And for the whole season of classic films, we have decided to kind of emulate the experience of an audience in a cinema when a silent film is being played with live accompaniment. Because as you pointed out, always the musicians kind of bring the attention to themselves, even when they don't want to. It's natural when you're sitting in a cinema and something is happening before you to take notice of that. And we wanted to experiment with like, how can we translate that to an online environment? And we gave the freedom to the artists to approach our concept of like having two screens, one of which is dedicated to a film, and the second one dedicated to a representation of the musicians. And for example, Martin and Johanna and Jan have decided for Hříchy lásky to not be shown at all, to have just a picture. So I was thinking that maybe Martin can tell us a bit more about like what was the process of deciding like how to approach your visual representation in the online environment.
Maybe before, I would like to a little bit to connect with my colleagues, and because I think there is what came on my mind that we learn lots of from this kind of things about how to approach actually working with the image, because working with the sound and image, because to Sara, some kind of inspiration come to my mind. I think this kind of fidelity, perceived fidelity with the image. I think that's something very important. It's a completely new, I would call it compositional dimension, right? It's something what Jan mentioned as well about loudness with the image experiencing. So, or Tomáš, like appropriate, unappropriate chords, right? So, but to something else. Like I think that this is something what fascinates to me in general, I'm working with audiovisual or in this thing kind of completely new compositional questions. So that's the first of the things. That other thing that I very much take up on the idea of the fixed media, right? That the film is a fixed media. And I think this is a kind of beauty about it. As much as it's beautiful to play live, but it has kind of different aspects. But I think that to quote very famous, like sculpturing the time to making these things, like how much would like to say, because when we're playing live, there is the problem of orchestration. We are kind of very much limited in the way of orchestration, the sounds, because we can play, let's say, different sounds. Because for me, what's quite interesting is about, in general, is that we got like different type of sounds or communication system, like speech, we got the noises, right? We got the musical sounds organized by the tonal, but the soundtrack of the film is all these things together. And I think that's what we could, as a composer or sound designer, that what fascinates me, to take all to the game, right? And when we're playing like just music in the sense of ability of us as musician, we're limited to that performance. So we're limiting us in a certain way, what's not necessarily good or bad, but in the film we can use so many sounds and so many techniques, which are very difficult to get in the live performance. And we got much more broader palette to work with, noises, and we got much more broader palette of contract between the, like what Sara mentioned, like we don't need to depict necessarily what's the image. We can work asynchronized. We can work in the questions. We don't need to really. We can leave the viewer listener in the uncertainty, right? So that's something like what's a really beautiful position of the composing or organizing sounds for the cinema now. But learning from these old experiences, it's I think very vital. And all these things, it's something what I'm working on as a theorist or as a practitioners, and we applied it into the film. So we played live some things, but then because I think there is still great thing to play live with the people and to get ideas and to see friends actually. And then we got this opportunity to edit and to do something else. And one other note is that I think that I don't know how much is the respect I can use to the something we were working on, because I think the respect should be there, like permanent something. But I took it as a starting point, this movie. So I was not very much thinking like what Karol Lamach is gonna say about the movie. But I took about that what the movie told to me, and we spent lots of hours with the movie. We playing live before, and we playing lots of field recordings as well with the movie, because I think they are charged with a completely different semiotics or explanation and other things as a tonal music or accords or different progression structuring. And we kind of love these things, and we worked really with the not really locked with the image, but we were very much locked with the text, I would call, about this film. So what the film meant for us. So there was only one synchronization we got in the emotional stuff. And when we took opportunity to do some crucial elements with the silence or the cuts, and we wish very much about it, people would watch the movie and with the full sensitivity of the sound as well, because we created something something. I would use the word new, but some kind of new artifact, which just started with that, and just to thank for this movie, because I really loved the movie. I think this is a very straightforward and very banal story, which is so true. So actually, we could just to keep the image. So that's what I would like to say to viewers, that just don't watch us, to watch a movie and listen to the movie. So that was our intention.
I think that the point of respect, or the word respect, is a very, very good point in context of silent films and silent film sound. And it's always a good question to ask yourself, how the actual sound connect to the film, and if they should connect to the film as much as they do, or if they should create sort of a parallel dramaturgy or not. Like, this is a big question that Tomáš has also kind of noticed when he was talking about people having specific reactions to his accompaniment. And I think that that's something that I want to talk about a bit more, not only in the context of like diegesis, if like silent film soundtracking or live film soundtracking should be actually trying to sound like it's a part of the film, and also like the genre choices, if silent film, because we all know the classical let's say conservative piano accompaniment that can be heard all around the world, and it's really fine because it's historical, and it kind of interprets the film in a traditional way. But for example, we at our institution, we try to offer different viewpoints on like how can a silent film sound today, and what the different approaches are. So I would just like to ask you all, what do you feel, or how do you feel the respect towards the film and towards the work connects with your specific approaches that you have chosen for the accompaniments? Maybe Tomáš, if you can start.
Well, my way of respecting the film is respecting it as a finished work of art in a closed form and closed media. As I said, this gives me some freedom to do whatever I want. I'm not making the movie better. Yeah, I'm respecting it as it is. I'm not adding anything to it. I'm doing my stuff. So what else should I do? It sounds logical to me.
And just as a follow-up question, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think that there would be something, say, off limits that you wouldn't even consider doing while doing live soundtracking?
This is interesting question, or maybe interesting mental experiment.
Don't try him.
I don't really think so. I think I have a long-term experience that good work of art works, even if it is, for example, incomplete or in strange context, or I don't know, even maybe covered with something else. So I wouldn't really be afraid of this stealing of attention. Yeah, of course it is there already, so we have to count with it. Yeah, it's there from point one. That's maybe, yeah, we cannot get rid of this element, so it's there, so we don't have to talk about it anymore. Yeah, that's my position.
And Ian, how do you feel about the topic of respect towards the original work or silent film in particular? And are there any like genre choices that, or do you think that the concept of genre even applies here, or is it important?
It's not important. I feel like the genre is important only if you want to find some music in the library, but nowhere else. So I feel like it really depends on it really depends on the specific situation. For example, if I did, for example, live performance for a movie, I'm not sure about the name, but it was like Schwarze Kugeln, like an old German silent movie. And it was festival. So why not to make it like wild and experimental? And I don't know when is the when the movie is wild. We used a lot of like strange noises, and people are using a space to resonate and something. So it's like the event. It's event which is like celebration of the movie or movie and the music. So why not to be really wild? But if I'm, for example, working with the film and making composition and recording it, it's very different for me.
Of course.
Because it's like creating different being, which is combined sound and movie. But my way of respect is, I think, to be aware that I'm not really the person who is making the music. I think I always, even if I'm working, I don't know, with the theater, with the sound films, with I don't know, people like therapy. Always, if I'm more hearing than try to do something, you know. So the music must come to me, maybe through me, yeah. But if I'm like trying too much to do something, it's not working, and I feel it's disrespectful because the film is already resonating with the music, and I'm just opening it, finding it, something like that.
And Sara, when I said a sentence about classical piano accompaniment, you kind of shrugged, and where I said it's more than fine, and you're just like, oh, maybe it's not. So I wanted to ask you, like, maybe a bit provocative question, but in certain circles there is this feeling, or like when you screen, let's say, a silent film, but it could also apply to different films, and you try to do something live for it or something new with it, or it applies for live cinema as well. There are certain people or certain circles that would feel that not enough respect is shown to the material, and then there are people who feel that maybe there's too much respect in certain types of, let's say, accompaniment or approaches. So given the way you kind of frowned and kind of shrug during the mention of piano accompaniments, I just felt that maybe you have some feelings about this.
You cannot guide your judgments based on my frowny faces. Really, it's no criteria. I can't control it, and it doesn't really mean that I disagree with something. To answer your question, well, first of all, I wanted to react to what Martin said, because that's basically what I was saying. Not so much about respect or not respecting. I want to trust we all are respectful people in whatever we do in our life, not just if we're doing music for a film. But what Martin was saying is more or less what I meant with, it's a counter nature activity, because film very much has fixed music. It's a fixed media. I, for instance, well, speaking for myself, it's a studio job, right? I sit in the studio by myself with the film, and I figure out with trial and error and many hours spent with very short material. Then you figure out, it's almost aiming for perfection. Of course, that's a different conversation, but it's aiming for perfection, which live action doesn't have, right? Because reaction time, because in my case and in your case with instruments is the same. There's as much as you can do with 2 hands and maybe 2 feet, right? So there's that difference that in the studio I can accumulate layers and layers, not only layers of sound, but also layers of understanding and layers of action. And live, I cannot do that because there is a limit to what I can do live, right? My frowny face when you mentioned piano, I think it's valid. There is a certain nostalgia with this kind of experience, right? If I walk in Pondrepo and there is someone playing the piano to a silent movie, it's an icon for the experience itself. It's a way to experience that, and I don't think it's I don't think it's respectful or disrespectful towards the material. It's a big gesture. It has very big gesture. And perhaps it also has to do with our culture of multisensorial everything, that we can't afford not having enough stimulus. Nowadays, I see that action as such. And then it also has to do, just holding from this example of imagining one piano to one movie, there's as much as the piano can do, right? There is a limited number of keys, a limited, oh my God, piano players will kill me, a limited numbers of sounds you can do with the piano. Not really, I know they're unlimited, but you get the point. Maybe a prepared piano, I don't know. But you know, so I don't think it has to do with respect or not respect. I think it has to do with being counter nature. It's a very, very much. It's a work that for instance, the film with Chantal, we could clearly see that she had a limited amount of time to make the sounds, analog sounds, to record what she could, to add what she could, and the film became perpetuated that way because she could not go over and over revisiting and insisting on making sounds for all the actions, right? That's also what turns the experience interesting, because you can see the choices she made, the sounds she chose to add sound or not. So yeah, sorry, I'm already somewhere else. I don't remember what to ask me.
Oh, I think you're still here. You're still in the main topic. During you were speaking, I felt like the rest of the panelists had maybe some reactions. So if you had any reactions, I would like to give you an option to react before I ask another question.
I think there is just some things, because I think that Tomáš meant, and for me it's very important in the work of art, and it's a sense of incompleteness, right? As a purpose of my thinking of art, it's a kind of mystery, and it's a kind of very discuss things about the contemporary sound design or scoring of the movies, which I don't know, Gus van Sant, Peter Strickland, right? There's lots of things which are debating this, and there is I can point to the book of Daniela Kulish-Wilson, which is speaking about sound design, new score, about the art of questions on not spoken word. Another work, when we're talking about the history of one-man bands in the early cinema, so we're talking about this kind of possibility of performance or live performance, which is great in the studio, but there is really the movie. I think in the sense of the movie or the fixed media, I think has this opportunity of really offline, right? It's not real time. I think, and this is very particular art of listening and of reducing and concentrating on something, and of course having the very broad palette of technology and expressions. That's I think that's super interesting of the cinema sound, and not always like playing playing with the tools or developing these tools. Like Chantal Ackerman is one of the examples of people playing with the tools. And even the very simple languages can be very powerful. It's not about intensities, it's about very different things. And I think that's the decision of the artists to make this decision of orchestration and what they can do with it. On the other hand, there is a fantastic thing about having events, having some films in the events and or audiovisual things and just getting wild. I think it's great. It's absolutely great with people and it's experience now, here and now. And we can get so much from that, because I think for me, what is very, very important working with image or other media is actually just trying. I'm so much surprised, like when I'm working against the voice, or I'm working against the narrative, or I'm working against the image, or against the space, and I'm working the space, like it doesn't let me go where I want. It just like navigates me where I would like to go. So this is a beautiful thing about sensitivity. So I think it's good to getting wild, and it's about David Lynch. Like very, very often it says that it's just trying, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm trying, and I think this is the great thing about playing live, to improvise, and you can benefit from that. So I think that it's not or good or bad, or it's just different. It's just different.
I would maybe add one point. Sara mentioned something like that the film is a studio job, and so maybe film music should be too. Or I'm sorry if I misinterpret your thoughts.
I couldn't hear what you said, actually. I couldn't understand the word.
This studio job. Yeah. I think in the context of old silent movies, this is interesting. Well, how you define studio job? Studio job can be also like just pressing the record button and playing it basically live.
No, not in that way. Also, because the relationship starts in the set, starts with recording location sound. Many ideas come from that. When I say studio job, I meant more like being able to go backwards, to go forward, to insist, to play a thing many times until you figure out the right tone, the right layers, the right textures for it. Which live, of course, with rehearsal, you do that.
But I think this obsession of control is something that is pretty much present, of course, in cinematography. But it's not the only way how to do.
But I didn't say that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And specifically, the old films had this control pretty limited due to technical reasons compared to today. So even the possibility to revise everything 100 times and go back in every step was very limited.
Well, but you would, for instance, with digital shooting now, you shoot much more than you rehearse. And back then we would rehearse much more than we would shoot. You would rehearse, block the scene, so I don't think just the storage of the information was less possible because you wouldn't afford.
But
it was very planned. It was very controlled, very orchestrated.
For example, if you just take the budget and the time which Karel Lamach had, it is very small compared to today's cinematography. Of course, there were also big and expensive silent movies, but yeah, we are talking about several Lamach films here, so I use it as an example. I think that, for example, that there was quite a bit of ad-libbed stuff, I would say, or stuff made very quickly and with more of this life vibe than the controlled.
Yeah, but I think you're touching about a very essential question about control I think in the Facebook there was a discussion about the direct cinema, right? Which were like about, okay, we don't want to overproduce this thing. We would like to not disappear the kind of touch of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I think this is the kind of beauty of, I don't know, new wave, right? The big cuts or this kind of aesthetics chosen by rough cuts. Because if you're working in the studio or music concrete, bad cuts, yeah. But even those things are kind of ideology, and I don't think there is no ideology. There is no knowledge outside of culture. So even we are taking the things that we would like to don't control. It's a certain way of decision, right? Mm-hmm. and very legitimate. And I think that one of the beauty of the fixed pieces of or documentary, which is very produced, I think is this layering of it's different. I would not say it's better, worse, or I think you have to take this risk of control. You know, that don't become a control, like it's not about control. It's about like actually losing control with the film.
And it's also,
I think that's
it's more
about
losing knowing
control.
Your tools. You know, when we talk about control, it's just a control as in being in charge of what you're doing. It doesn't have to do, it doesn't have to do with being like, I don't know. I feel like there is a negative connotation to the word control. That I think control just I would replace the word control maybe by the word crafting. Like we're just crafting the product, the material, rather than
Okay. Yeah, because the control or crafting, or however you call it, it's just a tool, really. It's not the goal. I think like on the bottom of this discussion usually is like the old dichotomy between like mainstream and avant-garde approaches. Yeah, for example, if the film is serving the literature, let's say, the story, 100%, I have to avoid all bad cuts because, yeah, they would distract from this purpose. But if I like the cut itself, I can afford to make them strange because they are acting as a thing itself. They are not serving the storyline. They are maybe they have their own visual quality or what. Yeah, it's the same basically.
But this is very interesting because I think this dichotomy now, like it's not so simple, because I think that lots of avant-garde movies were like actually very overdone in the not sense in the overproduced, but actually having so many versions. We can talk about Godard and his obsession of, which is one of my favorite cutters, if I use the word. I love these things, but I think I think this kind of getting to the minimum, or I don't know how much Chantal Akerman like worked on the movie. I don't know how fast the movie was.
You want to talk about control?
That's what I was thinking, because from my experience, like lots of movies which I very much like and were made in the very rough fashion, which I very much like very 60s music, concrete, and I don't know, tape, one tape recorder and one razor, right? But there was this kind of things about possibility to control, to get back, right? Maybe this is the one of the very dangerous things, to getting back. And the other thing is, and it's much more complicated, it's about what really means like erasing somebody's work in the music history, right? Like why the cuts are not heard, right? There's lots of things about it. It's like kind of unheard production or unheard materiality. There is no unheard work, right? So for example, like lots of things like which were made by Godard were like, kind of depicting the materiality, not only the materiality of sound and strong counts, but this kind of like answer to what was going in Hollywood, or it's always a kind of what kind of practices of editing in Hollywood were made at the time. So I think this is sometimes always not only living in the world of music, it's sometimes very much connected with a very social understanding of the social world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that this debate kind of, apart from all the other topics, it kind of circles about around one topic that we haven't touched on really yet, and that's the materiality of film, like the material itself. Jeník mentioned it in context of Kříženecký and the way he approached soundtracking his films, or the earliest Czech films. And I think that's a really important topic that all of you must have tackled, both as a composers or listeners / viewers or theoreticians. How much does the film material itself, its grain, its scratches, colors, the actual material on which it was shot and it was then later printed, how does it influence the sound, or how can it serve as a starting point for the composer or sound designer or even a sound engineer, or how much is the materiality of the film itself connected then to the materiality of the sound, and how does it connect to the whole narrative you're trying to build as a composer? If anyone wants to take the floor, or I can ask specifically.
Okay, I will say something. It's just a tool for me. Just maybe I can call it mirroring, yeah, because sometimes it's very easy to start if you use something which is obvious, yeah. So so the material is of course very different, and for me specifically with the Kříženecký, it was like a big deal because there were different versions of the films. Yeah, there were different versions which were from different sources, because it's like it's complete filmography. So some pieces are just different because of its grain, or of its dirt, of its color, or something like that. So for me, it was, of course, as I told in the beginning, that I perceive everything like music. So I hear the grain of the movie, I hear the color of the movie, so I can build on that sometimes. But there are films where is it totally, for me, exciting and okay to go very different way. So it's not again, it's not in general. For me, for example, I did for the Křižanecký, there was a bonus material film, like just some very like 100 years old shots from the different places in Prague, and I decided just to record the find the specific places and to record the sound how it's today on the space, and it was like totally against the film material, against I don't know, but it created different state of mind, like you are there in 100 years ago and today in the same time.
Maybe in this topic, it would be interesting to go back to the question of completeness of a work of art. You know, I rarely get into contact with the materiality of the film. I don't see them fucking coils, you know. I see a projection. Yeah. Now, if there is something that reminds me in the projection, if there is something there which reminds me the materiality, it's usually some kind of flaw, something missing, piece of picture. I don't know, dirt, whatever. So, in a way, the complete artwork doesn't really exist. It's just in ideas land, and when you materialize it somehow, or when you make it real, it's inherently incomplete.
The screen has switched to Martin. I'm not sure if he wants to say something.
Yeah, I was thinking about it because I agree, but maybe my idea of incompleteness is something that we're working with the multisensorial experience, and when I simplified you're getting like the information 3 times, for example, right? So you see it on the picture, it's something is said, and even you're getting the music which is saying you have to be said. Right. So this is something like what I was thinking about. It's not necessarily everything to say. And I think that with this audiovisual counterpoint, or how to call it, it's something that we can play with that stuff. And of course, it's for me something that materiality, it's very popular word now. I think that for me, materiality, it's something what I do. I'm transforming sound. So I am working with the sounds which are mostly recorded sounds, even if I am the person who recorded the sound, maybe played them. But this is a way of how I'm sculpturing the sound in the time, how I'm developing the sound in the time, and even and that gives me this opportunity to actually get from one type of sound to completely other type of sound, and we can talk about grain. I love grains. I love distortion. I love that the sound is actually are numbers in my way at a certain point, and I can do whatever I want with the numbers. And only one thing when I stop myself is that okay, it does something to me, or maybe I don't understand what it does to me, so let's use it. So they're different things, but I think the very different thing about talking about materiality of sound, of medium, is from historical part about that we're working with something what was actually existing in the space, right? So the tape, I got the tape, and the tape is existing in the space, and I came across an excellent article from one of the books I got from NFA. It's from Jan Burian. And there was a great thing about that. Actually, we got this measure starting to work with the measures. So actually what I'm doing with the sound is I'm sculpturing the sound. I'm just giving the sound somewhere. So this is very much for me, the materiality, which is connected me that I got this opportunity to actually doing the Lego something, right? And now a little bit less as we don't working with the physical tape, right? But we are still like feeling like certain vibration. But I don't know like what really is a material, because I can hear like what sampling rate I'm using. I can hear the processes. I can hear, that's what is for me important, because materiality nowadays is like at least very popular and very difficult to say what really it means, right? So it's for me, it's a rather traces of the processes I'm going through, and I love to let people know this went through this guy. And I think that this try of completeness for me is this actually this kind of perfectionist, you know, like this super, I don't know, like pure digital, like, I don't know, hyper realistic thing, which doesn't need to be necessarily bad decision, but I think is for me, it's something that it lost any traces of touch, right? So maybe this is something about the materiality, what I like. I know. And I kind of missing that when I see the black and white movie. I love noise. I love noise. I love noise.
Me too.
It just occurred to me to look at my watch actually, and I kind of got shocked how late it got. So I would just like slowly like to open the floor for the Q&A. We can, of course, or we will continue our debate. And if any of the attendees has anything to add or ask, please raise your hand. You can do that by clicking the button raise hand in Zoom, or you can write the question or your note in chat, or just like write down you want to say something and we will unmute you. And before I open the floor, I actually, even though that we have many more topics that we wanted to cover, but that's kind of the nature of this debate. It could be a cyclist that would take more than one panel. But this whole, or the topics you were mentioning in the past, let's say 20 minutes, kind of go well, or like, I think are more and more present in the public discourse, or in the sense that film sound and film music is becoming more and more popular in terms of, let's say, soundtrack re-editions, new releases of old soundtrack music, or even like live soundtrack events. We know that from like Hollywood context or even Czech context, starting from Star Wars to Zdeněk Liška films. And I think that really raises the question, what actually is a soundtrack, and if the soundtrack itself can exist without the film, or if when you take a specific sound or specific music, or the whole soundtracking of a film and present it without its original context or original media, if it still is the soundtrack, or if it becomes a new work, because we don't tend to re-release classic films without its sound, but we tend to re-release classic sound without its films, if you will. So how do you feel about that? Or how do you feel about the tension that's there between the sound and the picture? Sara or Martin or whoever.
Sara, please.
Oh my God, why? In English, I kind of feel frustrated with the fact that when we refer to soundtrack, we refer to music. Mm-hmm. And even, you know, Martin mentioned rightly the book from Daniela, something I can't say her last name, it's too difficult, but the sound design is the new score, is the book. And to me, it's still funny that we can talk about sound for film without talking about music, even though sound operates in a completely different syntax and semantics than music. I think, fortunately, which Daniela's book brings attention to, because she mentions a whole bunch of very well done movies that don't recur to music to convey their ideas and their emotions. I think at least the work I do myself in all my attempts, I'll say like these, my favorite works after I finish, so some sort of completeness feeling, Tomáš, are the ones that I feel more accomplished, are the ones that I can extract the sound track I did, the timeline of sounds that I did, and I can send it to radio, and I can play it as a radio piece. I can detach it from the image and play in the radio. So to answer your question, I think we are aiming, I think a lot of work has been done towards a true liberation of sound. So yeah, I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, I thank you, because this is the agenda. I when I started to work with my wife Johanna, when we met, we were talking about using the sound in the movies, because we were thinking about they are charged with the different semantic affectiveness. There is no sound without affect, right? If it's music, and there is always charged by something, and I will come to explain more what I mean by that. And there was great work by recent, I think, 8 years dedicated to nothing new. Actually, we are coming out from the history of montage, right, in the Russian early cinema, or even we going very much deeper in the promises of radio, or the promises of the art, like new arts, which surprisingly, like the music became very strong, very like music in the very programmatic sense of Wagnerian, which was very much criticized in the beginning of the 20th century, from futurists, I don't know, to everywhere, but actually by lots of composers, like anti-Wagnerian kind of reaction, and thinking about this, the music doesn't depict the things, and not to be necessarily literal. An expectation of working with the sounds and organized sounds, varies, etc. Yeah, but there was lots of paths of the film world, which were followed by different artists, and nowadays we got a very strong alternative, which, thanks to a lot of authors which were working with the sounds, I don't know, 60s, like we got like called like in general like acoustic authors, and something like what is very what was made by the sound design, but by itself, like what does it mean? Oh my God, right? There is not very clear definition of the word, what the sound design means, and even there is like something we are gonna stuck with that. Walter March is about to having narrative mandate. That's something what I very much like. So I can actually organize sound within this image, and the narration doesn't necessarily means that is having the something beginning, middle, and the end necessarily in the one row, and it can be affective, right? So we got even the word music in the 2021 means lots of. It's very difficult to define what the music is, right? So if we be talking about film, like what the film is actually now, what the music is now, and we're getting like to very complicated thinking, and the genre itself, like it's very complicated. Maybe genre, only good definition I heard about genre is the kind of expectation or kind of gravitation towards something. So, and the particular in sound design is, for me, it's a kind of composition, or it's having like kind of tendencies to the sound arts, sonic arts, music, everything experimental, like everything what kind of works in the sense, right? But it's still organized in the sense like how you treat control or organization from the philosophical point of music, what happened in music composition. And it's interesting that lots of debates are gonna stuck with the music, right? The music is very much it's a very problematic, and there is this kind of stigma why some artists don't like to talk about music, and why we're talking about the music, and we have to go through, like music is very much charged thing. And from my practice, like when we working on the movie, like we having like lots of different materials. Like I would call this is music. Okay, this is, I don't know, noises. This is something. In a certain point, we split the stuff, but then we are trying to merge it. And this is the words like the kind of integrated soundtrack, which sounds horribly. Yeah, I think that's this horrible word. And I love to talk about the soundscape of the movie. I think this is something like which integrates all the form of organizational sound. I think this is something what can be very fruitful, and then we can go behind it, because I think the potential of the sound is much more bigger than some cultural definition of what music is. I think that that's maybe my long.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this today because I just came from the studio where we finished mixing of film for which I composed the music, and I was thinking if it is possible to publish it as a OST, and I came to a conclusion that it's impossible, or it would have to be made completely different, because the sound designer made a great job, and it's basically music from the start. Without with my compositions or without them, yeah. So yeah, I always feel it a bit weird to hear so-called soundtrack just as, you know, selection of songs.
I think we have one question from the audience, and it's directed to Tomáš from anonymous attendee. So I'll write it out loud. So how does a musician like Tomáš use a picture analyzer to accompany silent films? So more of a practical question for Tomáš.
That's nothing really complicated. I made a little patch in pure data that picks up the visuals through camera, or I just used a little webcam, but it could be definitely possible to make it more sophisticated input. But I used the camera, and now there are several objects that make all kinds of analysis, like picture-wise, movement-wise, whatever you need. And you can just take a bunch of numbers out of it and then convert it to MIDI or whatever other protocol you need, and feed some kind of sampler with it, or synth, or whatever.
Maybe so if you could like talk a bit or like briefly about the specifics, if you remember what were the particular aspects that the algorithm was picking up on in the film, what were the parameters that were triggering the numbers?
In the version I used in VLI, I use this way of work also in other projects. But in VLI, it was something that was surprisingly close to the, you know, mechanical sound of the projector. Probably because of the picture rate. So yes, so I made some kind of noisy, drony soundscapes from the picture that really sounded a bit like an old projector, even if generated synthetically.
Yeah, so 9 o'clock is approaching, or is already hit us, actually. So I would like to ask the audience again, if anybody has probably a last question for our panelists, or a note, or anything that could be of interest to our topic, or many of the subsequent topics that we've touched on during the panel. So I'll just give a couple of seconds for everybody to have a chance to raise a hand or write a question down. And if nothing would happen or will happen in a couple of seconds, even though that I think we have many more topics to cover, and we have just opened, I feel like we have just started, and we can actually now dive into the interesting part of our potential debate. It looks like we will have to leave that for another time, hopefully and preferably live somewhere, hopefully in Ponrepo, but we will see how that goes. So it doesn't look like anybody has any questions or notes, which is also fine. After an hour and a half, I can understand that. So maybe if David wants to have a final word about our program in Ponrepo, that's going to be starting with, because I'm not sure that everybody was here at the beginning of our program. So before I sign off and give the floor to David, I would love to thank all of our guests for the lovely talk and for all the work they have done for us or for anybody else in the realms of film music and film sound. And next time we will hopefully try to answer the pressing questions: what actually is film sound and what is film music, and many more questions that we have written down during this panel. So thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.